Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Wednesday, Season 2, Episode 6. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I want to start off with the in memoriam we got at the end of the episode, just because I don't want to end up forgetting, but the actor's name, and I'm probably going to butcher it, so I do apologize. It's maybe Valeru, Pavel, or Pavel Dan. They were the actor who played the barista at Nevermore. Sadly passed last year. I think I was reading it was sometime before season 2 wrapped. So just kind of wanted to include that at the beginning. I'm always, I won't go into it. Never mind. Nevertheless, like I said, I wanted to include that at the beginning just in case, so I don't want to end up forgetting about that later. But diving into the episode itself, we had our coda opening with Wednesday acting the way she does, which my immediate thought was either this is a nightmare or they switch bodies, and lo and behold, it turns out to be a switch body situation. I love the whole you might be asking yourself how we got to where we are right now, and then we rewind about 16 hours and some change. I mean, the telltale sign that they probably switch bodies, specifically her wearing Enid's clothes, was my telltale sign. So quite a few things that kind of end up breaking down as we go throughout the episode. First, we open with the Addams families being interrogated by Dort and Santiago about what they knew and when they knew it, and the whole situation of it all. Obviously, they're making Santiago's job very hard because they know certain information. They didn't let her know about what Judy was up to, but it was also a self-preservation thing because it's I don't report on Judy. Judy doesn't report. The fact is that I was there, and I'm the reason why a lot of the outcasts ended up getting free. You could also make the argument a lot of that death is also on Wednesday unintentionally, but it's she set people free, but once again, some of which unintentionally, but it's that's always the problem. There's massive consequences to her actions, and it's would those lowest patients have been able to survive? They would have still been captured and experimented on, so they probably would have been killed one way or another, but it's still situation could have played out a little differently if there was a lot more communication between everyone about what's going on. And obviously the Addams family was able to kind of swerve their way around it because it's just kind of I forgot exactly how Gomez handled it, but obviously he's kind of the family lawyer. It's the family lawyer, so he basically was able to kind of say if you do go after us or something like that, probably paint your department in kind of a negative light, which Dort is so quick to be it's all resolved, everyone's fine, no one's dead. It's he's so quick because he wants all the things going on at Nevermore to go off without a hitch. Once again, he still continues to be the enigma, and we're what are you planning? Do you actually have good intentions and you're just so desperate for that? Or it's it feels like his storyline might not get wrapped up this season. His storyline feels more like that might carry over into next season. It might be this might be the setup for him to be revealed to be a bad guy, and it feels like that. But I don't know, because I feel like we haven't made any progress on his side of things. It's been mainly about Judy, and this all connects to Tyler's mom and Isaac, which we'll get to in a second. So then we have Wednesday talking to Weems, actually making it seem like she's willing to listen now, but once again, refusing to, because Weems' perspective is you need to remedy your relationship with your mom, which is ironic considering Weems has such beef with your mom that she's the one but once again, it's her job as a spirit guide. Is it whether Wednesday wants to admit it or not, but her powers are allocated to her emotional state. But also, it's based around the family lineage has to be together. You're pushing so far away from your family. Your family being fractured as it is affecting your abilities. You need to reconcile with your mother, and that's the only way this is going to help. I'd almost wonder, would it also help for Morticia and her mom to reconcile too? Because there's a lot of on that side of that the women in the Addams family, in that family not gelling and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if that plays a part or not. but maybe it's specifically in the Addams family that it's like, because that fact is her mom didn't come up in conversation, because maybe, like I said, it's the Addams family itself that needs to be kept together, and Morticia's side of the family doesn't technically count in that fray since Weems never said anything about it. So, but Wednesday refused to listen, and it's like, I'll get my abilities back another way. So she ended up talking to Orloff about, I believe that's what eventually led to her asking Orloff about Francois, and then he ends up finding out about, she ends up finding out about Isaac. I would have never guessed that that's what that was about, whereas like Isaac's her brother. I was like, wow, that's a crazy development. I would have never guessed that. I was wondering what the correlation and connection was, and would have never known it was a familial one, and especially knowing that she's the basis behind everything that Isaac was up to 30 years ago and trying to do again today. So, and let's kind of stay on that subject really quickly, and pivot a little, where, Tyler wakes up, his mom is there, it's like, oh my God, I'm real, like, I was framed to be dead, but, and your father was lied to, but I'm here, we're together now, and then, like, his leg is bound, and he's like, wait, what are you doing? She's like, well, you transformed last night, even though it's like, well, he's obviously previously transformed. I don't think, not unless she's under the belief this is the first time he ever transformed. I don't think that's her belief, but I think it's just, right, fresh off the transformation. Like, and she says it later on, like, the more you transform, the more and more of your humanity you lose. So it's just like, right, you're in a heightened state right now. But she herself just came off a transformation, so she's not in the best state either. Because he's just like, whoa, you gotta let me out of here. He raises her voice to her, and she's like, slaps him. And it's like, ugh. It's kind of like, and Tyler kind of, I think, like, it's probably a multitude of things of like, right, she is his master now, so like he kind of like, because later on, the next scene we see them eating pancakes, and he's like, oh yeah, these are delicious, as good as they used to be. I mean, there's got to be a multitude of complex feelings in that moment, that for one, finding out your mom's alive, also that now she's your master, it creates this complicated dynamic, even more complicated, more effed up than the Thornhill one, where it's like your mom's the one that, but it's also like her way to protect you, because you need a master as a hide. But, and like I said, that was my misconception too, because like the whole, I couldn't remember what Capri said specifically about female hides last episode, so I was like, do they not need a master? But then it turns out, well, maybe she does, considering like she's starting to cough up blood, so she's starting to degenerate as well. But yeah, like Isaac eventually finds his way to them. Because at first when he opens up that like secret passage under the doghouse at Galpin's place, I was like, oh, is that like a secret lab? It's like, no, that's where they're hidden out, because she even said, I think he made that space specifically, Galpin made that space specifically for Francois, just in case, so she would never like ever be in a situation where she might hurt Tyler. So that's why this place was specifically built, because this is also where she was hiding when she was listening to the radio, and eventually went to Morticia last episode to try and find Tyler. But either way, Isaac found them, and it's kind of this complicated and interesting family reunion where it's like, right, her brother died 30 years ago, but it's like, no, like, I'm back and I'm alive again, and I'm going to do what I couldn't do before. Your condition is worse. My machine, which is supposed to take away outcast ability, obviously Judy's family perverted it to give those abilities to normies, but he made that machine specifically so he could take away his sister's hide abilities, because that was the only way to save her, essentially, from herself. And he wants to do the same thing. I figured that might come in conflict with Tyler, because Tyler's more okay with being a hide than his mom is, but also it's like, well, being a hide would mean forever being stuck as your mom's, like, your mom being your master. But I think there could also be an element of him trying to find a way of breaking essentially that kind of sire bond between a master and a hide. Like, I could see him trying to potentially use this situation later on. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I'm curious, like, is he going to find a way to basically absorb his mom's hide abilities? And if he's able to absorb her hide abilities, maybe it'll make his hide stronger so that he is his own master and he'll never need a master again and he can just stay. Because he doesn't seem like he's willing to, because the whole conversation's about taking away his mom's hide abilities, not his. But even if they don't take away his hide abilities, which is kind of the catch-22 of it all, still be stuck with his mom as his master, but it's also his mom, so maybe you'll feel good. But once again, being a hide freed him, and it comes with its own like condition with the whole dying thing. So I feel like Tyler's twisted enough for that to be a thing. I mean, this feels like a patricide inevitability to me. So I'm just guessing, but that's where it feels like Tyler's going to come in to this. We're just like, I'm going to kill my mom, and either like take her abilities as a hide and then kill her afterwards. Because it's like, oh, I don't want to give up even if she wants to give up what she has, I'm not. And in fact, it's going to make me stronger and I'm never going to have to worry about it. Or maybe it's just going to make him die twice as fast. I have no idea, but that's the inkling I get. But, we'll circle back with Tyler and his family, as we progress through the story. But Wednesday went to her grandmother to learn more about how to get her ability back, even temporarily. And it's like, what was it? Was it Rosalina Rotwood? Was kind of like her grandmother's mentor, and she was a great and powerful raven. So it's like you have to go to her grave, and she'll temporarily give you her powers. Do think it's interesting because like there's the whole conversation between ravens and doves, and her grandmother being like, "Oh, you're a raven like me who doesn't get caught up in the sentimentality of who needs family." Your mom's like a little too emotional because her grandmother said like she walked away from using her ability, and Morticia's perspective is, "Oh, you stopped using your ability after Ophelia," but it's like, oh, is that what your mom says? Because she basically will use her ability for financial benefit, also her way to kind of spy on her enemies and basically watch them be suffering and get joy out of it. But yeah, like specifically, like I don't know if it was meant to be a dove or whether just another bird, but the fact is, like when she was doing the whole shooting thing at the end of that scene, she shoots down a regular bird, and she's like, "Oh," and you're like, "Oh, that feels very ominous and symbolic." But obviously, before Wednesday could go off on her retrieval of her vision, she ran into Enid, and it had a big blowout because it's a lot of built up resentment they're having towards each other because like Enid's being pushed to the side, not knowing like all that Wednesday's doing for her, but also Wednesday's underestimating and putting a lot of fault on Enid about stuff that isn't necessarily her fault. It's just kind of like, I think Wednesday's just basically venting a lot of her own frustrations about things not going her way, but that's also Enid's point. You can't control everything. You're such a control freak about this. It's like, oh, how could I have known about Francois, like Tyler's mom? It's like, no, you couldn't, but that's the point. Stop acting like you have it all figured out. You don't have the pieces to the puzzle. You acting like you're so knowledgeable that you've got this all under control is what leads to you getting blindsided by stuff, so. And especially how that scene ends with the whole, like, basically, like, ending with the whole moral of, oh, walking in a mile in someone else's shoes. So I'm like, okay, so the body swap is going to be coming up then. I didn't realize it would just be like, until she went to Rotwood's grave and it was like, oh, if you mess this up, I'll play a trick on you. I was like, and that's where it comes into place. I did see that she was in this season. I doubt it's the last we've seen of her, but Lady Gaga, I was like, that's awesome. But she's Rotwood, and it's like, oh, I will give you the power to temporarily because it's like, because she sees through Wednesday. It's like, oh, your essentially like your arrogance is like kind of like, I can see it, like you're seeped in it. I can tell. So it's like, right, I'll give you an opportunity. And when she activates her vision, she only gets a little bit, but it's like a hard cut, like between like Tyler and his mom back and forth, but obviously the vision was cut short. That to me adds a little more validity, at least to me, about what the end result might be, because the argument probably is also like that could just be symbolic of, hey, here are two Hydes who are losing their minds more and more as time goes by, especially after the aftermath of this episode. But it feels like it could still also lead to like the whole, especially because like one would disappear, the other wouldn't be there. That could just be symbolic of both of them, but it could also play into what I was saying of basically both Hydes becoming one. But either way, Enid interrupted the whole thing because basically anyone who breaks curfew, because Dort set a new one, if it set a curfew, and it's like if that was broken, no one would go to the gala. Emma, call her by her actual name. If Enid wants to go to the gala, like she has to bring Wednesday back before before Wednesday's found out not to be there. And because of it, the two of them switch bodies. And I think that was such a beautiful thing about this episode. I'm sure that had to be a lot of fun and interesting thing for both Emma and Jenna playing like each other. That's got to be so weird, considering like, right, you've played these characters for like over 2.5 seasons, and you've kind of gotten to know them, and now you get to have a little fun and switch it up and get to play these characters in a very different way. That, like, seeing Jenna play Wednesday the way she did and Emma playing Enid the way she did, it's just it feels so weird. But I'm sure, like, just from an acting standpoint, it's like, oh, that's got to be like weird and fun. Because, every aspect of the performance is so different. Just like the way they carry themselves, the way they walk, the way they dress, the way they speak, their mannerisms and stuff like that they kind of... Now, it's such a, like I said, I'm sure from an acting standpoint, when you're just able to do stuff like that, like a body swap type of thing, it's like, oh, it's fun thing, getting to, like, exaggeratingly play... that, especially because these characters are the polar opposites of each other too, so that's got to be so much fun. And the thing is, they both did such a terrible job being each other. Like, every once in a while, they get it a tiny bit, but like, I don't think, to be fair, like, Wednesday didn't really do anything to really play it. She was still just kind of herself, and just like her demeanor never changed. Whereas like Enid, like, tried to really get into being Wednesday, which is kind of like, yeah, like, oh, like this and that. Like, she'd throw out some Wednesday-isms, but like, I feel like Wednesday never really truly embodied Enid the way, like I said, Enid didn't give off the perfect Wednesday performance, but still, and once again, that's that funny thing about like, oh, when good actors have to act bad at bad act, it's such a, like, that layered funny thing. Because there's layers of, like, you're playing a different version of your character being played by a different character being bad at playing your character. Like, it's so meta and deep that it's just like, I think that's hilarious. Ended up finding out a lot of interesting things about each other. Obviously, Enid learned this ahead of time, and then Wednesday finds out more about it later on, the whole alpha situation. That's what seems to be the case with Enid, like her being a late bloomer, her first transformation being under a blood moon. And Enid's fear is, oh my God, like, if I become an alpha, alphas are all about being alone. And especially coming from a character who's always been like, I like people, I like friends, and I don't want to end up alone. And that's the thing that scares her the most about potentially being an alpha. But Capri's like, hey, we never know. Like, this could be something that's also dangerous too. Like, there's so much misinformation, we won't really know until we properly look after you. Then there's also Wednesday finding out that Bruno already has a significant other. It's like, why'd you get in a relationship with her then? So I'm like, oh, that sucks, especially after everything with, like, she found someone that seemed to be a kindred spirit, like, after everything with Ajax. Now you fall for someone else, and so I'm now, once again, my money was like, oh, maybe the Bianca and Ajax of it all, maybe not. So now I'm like, well, now Enid and that's also kind of effed up too, to be like, oh, I moved on to this other person. Oh, they weren't where I thought it was, so let's go back. I hope that's not the case, because, like, I think that would be unfair to both of them. I think that'd just be like, oh, you, like, I rebounded back to you. I hope that doesn't end. Maybe it will and it'll be fine, but I just feel like that'd be super unfair. It's just kind of like, that's just the natural part of life. Like, oh, you move on to someone else and things don't work out on that front. So either, but it is. I'm curious, is there legitimate, like, oh, it's complicated? Because I'm curious, is it a thing of, is it like an arranged thing, even if it was, doesn't excuse the fact is you led Enid on. If you knew what your situation was, you should have never let things with you and Enid progress. You were still kissing her this episode when you were getting your message. You were saying like, oh, it's from my mom, I'll call her back later. And then you had the audacity to kiss Enid afterwards. Like, it's all kinds of jacked up. I was like, the heart emoji and stuff like that. I was like, it seemed like, I was like, maybe it really is his mom. But it's like, no. Wednesday ended up finding out him being the two-timer that he was. So, like I said, we'll see whether there's more exploration on that. But also at the same time, it doesn't excuse or change anything. But I am curious to see what will happen on that front. What else we'll learn about his circumstances. They might not even bother going into it because it might not be, worth it. Like it, But who knows? And while pretending to be Enid, Wednesday also ends up discovering her mom is an author too. It's like she was looking at like her mom, I guess, wrote kind of like a smutty romance novel or whatever. Because initially she's like, oh, I can't believe my mother reads this. And she saw the like pages of like someone was typing or writing it. And I was like, your mom's the author behind these? It's like, yeah, things about, that's probably also why your mom connects with you about the whole writing thing, because she is one too. And it's like, that doesn't come out of nowhere. It probably stems from your mom. Like, it seems like that's a proper published book, it seems like. So your mom is probably, like, who knows what else she's written under that pseudonym. So this could be a thing that connects you and your mom, but, you're both, it's not just Wednesday, like, her mom tries too hard, but also at the same time, you can make the argument there's elements of, like, she doesn't try hard enough, because it feels like, and I guess in her mind, it's like, every time I feel like I do try to connect with Wednesday, she pushes me away further, so it's like, why be 100% transparent all the time and connect over these things? Because, like, I mean, also, like, Wednesday writes the books she writes, and it's like, her mom writes the books she writes, and it's like, we'll probably never be able to meet in the middle, because you literally saw the book, you're like, ugh, how can my mom read this dribble? And you find out, oh, your mom writes that so-called dribble. So it's like, you'd have your own preconceived notions and stuff if you found out about the type of books your mom writes. So we found out also that Wednesday, while, Enid was in her body, is actually allergic to cute and colorful stuff. Because, like, Enid's, like, drinking a drink, and then she starts breaking out. She's like, wait, she seriously is allergic to it? And her mom gives her some ointment, and it's like, oh my God, it cleared everything up. It's like, yeah, there's ashes in it and stuff like that. Also, like, she has to take these medication, like, every day for, like, her alert, I guess, to prevent that stuff. Because she doesn't take it later on, but I guess it's like, that's how she's supposed to, like, coexist in this type of place when she's not able to kind of indulge in, like, the Addams family, like, things, the creepy, dark, and cold stuff. But it's like, in such bright, colorful surroundings, it's like, you need your medication to kind of not literally break out in hives. She also, inside of Wednesday, also finds out, well, two things. One, how she's written in Wednesday's book. You should also take it as a fact of, like, well, how much of that has been rewritten? Because how much of that's like how she viewed her in season 1 versus how their relationship has developed. So, like, because she's been writing the book for a while, so it's the same thing of, like, that, because, yeah, the book was done for a while because she was sending it off, and people were like, oh, you should rewrite this. So it's not 100%. There's elements too that are still true, but I think it's also, like, that's also written when, like, her and Wednesday were not on, like, the good terms that they are. Well, ironically, they're not on the best terms right now, but you get what I'm trying to say. So it wasn't a full reflection of how Wednesday views Enid now, but there still is some truth to it. So she learned about that, which is what made her decide, like, oh, I'm gonna get back at Wednesday, and I'm gonna, like, go get, like, dolled up in Enid style clothes, dance around, bust out in hives, and everyone's recording it, so it's kind of her, like, revenge, especially because she finds out from later on, well, yeah, that was before she finds out from Agnes that Wednesday had a vision about her dying, and that's why Wednesday's doing all that she's doing. It makes a lot more sense to Enid, but it's still the thing of, how could you not tell me about that? That's infuriating. Like, once again, she had the right to know about, like, you having a premonition about my future. Speaking of Agnes, you do really feel bad for her when Enid in Wednesday's body, like, yells at her. I mean, it's understandable because Enid was frustrated because Agnes was running her mouth off about how terrible of a friend Enid is, and it's like, I could be a better best friend to you than her. Like, I can serve you in a better way than her. And then she kind of, yells at her and talks about she should stay invisible forever, which I was like, oh, that sucks. I mean, the sad thing is Wednesday did view her as kind of a nuisance, and only like you're a means to an end. It's not like she treated her like an actual proper friend. So I'm not saying that's how Wednesday properly feels, and but it's like a lot of times Agnes would always feel Wednesday's like contempt, but it's once again, she's, that's her stalker and everything, and you prove useful and I can continue to use you. So, and even Enid kind of said that. So once again, it is that thing of there is some nuggets of truth mixed in with that. But once again, that was also coming from Enid's like frustration with everything that Agnes was saying about her. And Agnes ends up going to this meeting where basically it's all these different body parts, which I wonder once again, I don't know the deep, Wednesday, the Addams family lore, if that's ever been explored on like Thing not being the only one, because he doesn't know who he is, doesn't know where he comes from. His earliest memory is the Addams family finding him. So he doesn't know about the body he was attached to or who he was. And there's a whole bunch of body parts. There was one person they talked about, Lisa. It's like, oh, she found her torso, And I love like the metaphor for that whole thing of like, we are the sums of our parts, but sometimes those parts are greater than the whole. And it's like, that was like a beautiful sentimentality, I think, especially for Agnes, who, she's like, I know I'm not a part, but it's still the thing of, I thought coming to Nevermore would make me feel more seen. I've never felt more invisible. And they welcomed her, and, she's finally feeling like she found a place. It was a really beautiful moment, I think, for Agnes. She needed that. She needed to feel like she belonged somewhere, because outside of like the Wednesday fan club, like that's the thing that connects them. But I don't know like what her actual friendship with them is. I mean, to be fair, she admires, in fact, she's completely obsessed with Wednesday, and to kind of be turned on by the person you're obsessed with, like obviously that's once again, it stems from a lot of like Agnes's own insecurities, and her loneliness is why she latched on to Wednesday so much, because I'm sure she saw like, she's probably never been able to connect with people, but here's someone who's such an oddity and such a dark and brooding person, and it's like me being like the quote-unquote creepy like invisible girl. Like, it does help. Like, I thought I found a kindred spirit in a friendship we had, but for her to feel like, oh, that kind of meant nothing, and here I am kind of being alone again. And it's kind of interesting because I think you can make the argument Agnes, Enid, and Wednesday all kind of share that fear of being alone, but just in different facets and different ways of ending up alone. But we'll get to that. But it's so sad. Like, she really like felt good in that space, and it felt good. And just for Isaac to show up later on and murder the professor, that's so sad, because it's like, oh, I gave you this thing that's basically gave you 30 extra years of life. I'm here to take it back. And I was like, oh, you're gonna leave him to suffer like that? It's interesting, too, because the professor had the perspective of your perversion of nature. Like, when you die, you're supposed to die. It's like, and it's just kind of like you come. I mean, to be fair, him coming back to life wasn't his intention. That was on Pugsley, which, Wednesday's got her own role to play in all of this, but so does Pugsley. But that seems like, Gomez and Morticia are in the same boat, too. It's still funny because they had that little family gathering, and it's like, oh, let's get all the lie. Oh, we had to be truthful. And Pugsley was like, oh, I let Isaac go, I'm sorry. But it's like Gomez saw him, and even Wednesday was like, did you think Dad doesn't know? And it's like, well, he does know. And so, but it's also like Morticia and Gomez aren't telling them everything either. So that's what I was like, yeah, you want your children to be honest, but you're not going to be honest, considering we know Isaac and Francois, like the people that are connected to your children, respectively, you have some connection to in the past. It's a whole thing. So then adding insult to injury for Isaac to eat his brain, because it's, oh, don't worry, Professor, won't let your brain go to waste. And for Agnes to come in to see that whole thing too, especially after that moment with the meeting and everything, that's just heartbreaking. But she uses that opportunity to try and follow Tyler, his mom, and Isaac. I mean, it's, for one, she's doing it for Wednesday, but it's also like, I think she wanted to get some retribution for the professor. I think some element of that too. So Morticia found out about Weems being, Wednesday's spirit guide when when Weems was there at the cottage, and Morticia was like, come out, and presents herself. But obviously, Enid in Wednesday's body can't see her, which I think is so interesting that it's so intrinsically tied to her spirit. So that even though, like, Enid's in Wednesday's body, she can't see Weems because all of that's tied to Wednesday, and Wednesday's essence and everything is in Enid's body. So I didn't bring that up earlier, but I think that's such an interesting thing, considering, like, usually a situation with a swap body, say like there's superpowers involved, usually the powers transfer. Like, no, the body stay in the power stay in the original body, which, I mean, obviously, like, Enid being a werewolf, it stayed in her body because that's intrinsically locked to her body, whereas, like, the spiritual connection is tied to, like, Wednesday's soul, so it's like her soul transferred into Enid's body. So it's just something interesting where I was like, oh, you would almost expect Enid to be the one to see Weems, but it's like, no, like, that's not intrinsically tied to Wednesday's body like Enid's werewolf abilities, or just being a werewolf in general is. So Morticia pushes Enid to go and save Wednesday. Well, they have to save themselves because it's like Enid didn't know that they were on such a time frame of, like, once a 24 hours has passed, they'll die if they don't rectify this. So they end up first trying to rescue Agnes as they go to Willow Hill, as Isaac's performing his experiment, like I said, to remove the hide from his sister. And Agnes gets caught. Luckily, Enid and Wednesday were there. Obviously, everything kind of hits the fan in a lot of ways, considering Wednesday in Enid's body goes full wolf. And it's interesting how, like, alphas are represented in this, because it reminds me of the monstrous forms from, like, oh god, how Peter looked in season 1 of Teen Wolf. If you're familiar with Teen Wolf at all, it kind of reminded me of that, because, like, he had, like, such a large hulking werewolf form and stuff. It just made me think about that. But would have been interesting if we had saw like a Hyde versus, like, that, especially considering, like, well, it's not only Enid kind of getting her payback because it's her body, but it's Wednesday in Enid's body getting payback, so there's like a double layer to that. But before he could transform, his mom stopped him, because it's like, the more you transform, the more of a toll it's going to take on you. So she stopped him, because Agnes kind of messed with the controls, and, like, the experiment, like, overheated, and the machine ends up blowing up. So there's no attempt to save his mom anymore. Basically, Isaac would have to take the time to potentially rebuild the machine again. Who knows what parts he would need to make that happen. So they end up managing to escape, and Wednesday, Agnes, and Enid all escape. And Agnes is like, oh my god, I knew something was up with you guys. You switched bodies. And for her takeaway, it's like, oh my god, Wednesday, we're still friends, aren't we? And it's like, well, I can get associated with this new colorful dynamic we're going to have. But they end up rectifying that by going to Rockwood's grave, and basically they had to explain what they learned about each other. And Enid's perspective on it, like, I get your complicated relationship with your mom, but what Enid discovered is, like, you're so, like, I admire your fearlessness, but I also get that the reason why you push your mom away is because you feel like your mom will never accept you for who you are, that maybe your darkness is so dark that even she's scared. But it's like, your mom will love you, and she obviously cares about you. Like, you don't have to be afraid of that. That's going to be okay. And then, Wednesday talks about Enid's strength, about, like, I'm sorry I underestimated you, but that, like, you are a very, like, kind person, and, someone could and your strength is very quiet, and someone like Bruno could mistake that for weakness and take advantage of it. But it's like, you're afraid that by being an alpha, you'll end up being alone. But she's like, I promise you that's never going to happen. I'm going to make sure of that. Because I'm sure for Wednesday, it's like, no matter what ends up happening, I'll be by your side at the very least. But I'll always be in a position where I'll make sure that no one ever just, like, leaves you alone. I'm sure there's twofold to that. And the whole situation led to them switching bodies back. But this whole situation has now made it so that things have changed. Enid's life is no longer in danger, but the life of an Addams is. The question is who, because the gravestone is destroyed. All you see is the Addams name. So that's going to be interesting to see. Not unless it ends up being a thing of someone has to pseudo die. I mean, Pugsley can restart someone's heart. So like maybe Wednesday will die, or maybe Gomez or Morticia will die temporarily, but then get like resurrected by Pugsley. It could be how that whole situation plays out. It does beg the question of, is this how things are always meant to be, considering like it was like Enid's grave was set in stone and it was going to be Wednesday's fault, and all this kind of happened because of Wednesday and everything. So it feels like this was supposed to be the inevitability, but things worked out and changed, and I believe things can change on this front. So it's going to be curious. It's going to be interesting to see how Wednesday handles this. Like after this whole thing with Enid, has she learned her lesson, and will she let her family know what's to come, or will she try to handle things all on her own, or will she rely on others, just not telling her family? It's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.